This is my legacy. Welcome to this week's bonus drop with more from our conversation with Patrick and Amy Kennedy. Patrick and Amy open up about navigating hard conversations with their kids, from setting boundaries around social media to talking honestly about mental health and addiction at home. If you've ever wondered how to parent with both honesty and hope, this one's for you. Let's jump in. One thing you said too, as a parent, Amy, with 5 children and being extremely busy. I mean, you all are, out there changing the world, being busy, but you said the importance of connecting with your children. I mean, like even just this morning on the way here, before Yolanda was on her way to school, driving herself.
Yeah.
But she wanted to talk about, homework. And so I was trying to get ready, but I made, sure to just carve out time and talk, so I know that it's different things and it also depends on each child. But are there some things that you all can share for our listeners that you have found ways to connect?
I kind of came to my realization of the importance of this after meeting Patrick. So I didn't have the training, as he mentioned, or the awareness. But if you sit with Patrick long enough, you're going to be brought along on the mental health train. And it was a realization for me that was what was lacking in my classroom. That was something that was lacking for so many young people. And then to have 5 kids and the statistics be 1 in 5 is going to struggle. And it's not always going to be the same one.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we can ebb and flow, as he said, through wellness and illness. And for some, it'll be chronic and it'll be lifelong. So doing interventions, but then also what does a constant or consistent care look like throughout the life course will be important. But within our own household, we definitely talk very openly about addiction, about mental health. We've tried to intervene early when it was important. We're lucky to have a network in this space. So we've made those calls. During COVID, we had the telehealth going. We were getting interventions because we weren't, even though we feel like we're being very proactive, we definitely weren't immune from having challenges with our kids. But also, the social media and cell phones has been a big piece of what we focus on. Everything from TV and family dinners, cell phones, having experiences together, taking time at night. Now with our second oldest, it's funny, we're still kind of tucking him in. Mm-hmm. He's going to be 13 in April.
As long as you can.
It's as long as you can.
Yes.
Because what you realize is, our oldest just turned 17. Once you stop, you can't go back. Yeah. That's awkward. Yes. But that time at night, that is the time they want to talk. So that's when we are early to bed. Patrick and I like to tuck in early. But that is when they are the chattiest and they want to really connect with you. And you have to allow for that time on their terms when they want to connect. But with the social media, we know how addictive it is for us. And that just sets them up for that type of distracted, needing to escape.
Yes.
And so limiting that and making sure that they don't have access to that has been really important. And then keeping them very busy and active in the community has been a huge piece of what we do.
Well, what Amy and I try to do with intention, and that's key, intention, is to try to be present for our kids. And it's really hard because we have busy lives. Of course, we all have technology that's distracting us all the time. But, spending time with our kids, holding them, paying attention to them, it lays the foundation for resiliency later on in life. Because if I don't pay as much attention now, I guarantee you I'm going to have to pay attention down the line because they're going to be struggling later on. I don't want to have to do that. Of course, they're all genetically predisposed to addiction and depression and the like. But I want to help build resiliency. Amy really has highlighted this idea that we ought to teach kind of social emotional learning, resiliency skills, coping mechanism development in school, because these are life skills that can help people not just try to prevent these illnesses from taking hold and pathologizing, but help us be more actualized and living out our full potential, as opposed to being kind of hostage to our stress, our depression, anxiety, addiction, which of course all take us hostage. When we're in the middle of these crises, we're not operating. We're not our own people. We're a shadow of our real self.
Coming up on My Legacy, what it looks like to build trust with your kids through honest conversations, even when it's uncomfortable. Like, follow, and share this with anyone who's navigating the sometimes choppy waters of parenting with more openness and less fear. What would you say if you're a single mom and you don't have ways to make your ends meet every month? What advice would you give some of our listeners who may not legitimately have access to some of the things that we're talking about? Where can they go to get help?
Well, I hear a lot of people come up and tell me that their families are suffering. What are they going to do? What can we do? And I always just say, like they say in the airplane, put your own mask on first before helping others. If you're not in a decent place, you're going to be of no help to the person you're trying to make a difference with. I often tell people about other kind of 12-step programs where they can kind of not be alone. The kind of worst thing with these illnesses is when you feel that isolation, no one understands, there's no one I can talk to. I think so much of our mental health could be done if, as I said, we empower each other to know a little bit about this, know how to start the conversation.
Are there any 12-step programs that are free or at cost?
They're all free.
Okay, so that's
the most amazing thing about the 12-step.
So one of the first things is if you're suffering in your home by yourself, get yourself healthy first.
Anything, overeating,
yes.
If you have addiction, if you are just the family member of someone who has addiction, alcoholism. So there's 12 steps for just about anything you can think of, but there's also other free resources. But I think what your question really highlights is one of the biggest challenges with our mental health system is the difficulty navigating it. Yeah. And so it feels like confusing. Where do I start? If your child screens for something at a pediatric visit, they give you a list. Like, here's all the providers in the area. You're like, okay, so I'm just going to call it. Like, do they even have, as Patrick mentioned before, that kind of specialization? I don't want just a generic, therapy session if it's an eating disorder. I want to make sure that I'm going to somebody that's going to get results, because I think that's where some of the skepticism comes from too, is it's not personalized care. And so people aren't getting the type of care specific to what their need is. But there's definitely free resources. There's resources within the school. Many faith communities offer resources and to check into that. But also, I would say there's a huge online offering, which is a blessing and a curse, because you have to make sure that when you are finding tools online, that they are evidence-based and accurate. There's a lot of misinformation online, and unfortunately that's what a lot of our teens are finding, and they're self-diagnosing and even over-identifying with some of those diagnoses. And so we have to be careful there and just make sure that you're finding good resources.
And Amy, I'm curious as to what would be some conversations that you would encourage parents to have with their children on mental health?
One of the things that we've just started talking more about is not just the social media, but as marijuana becomes legalized and online gambling becomes legalized, talking more to our kids about that and about how they are being manipulated to be addicted, because I think it is inherent in young people to want to be in control. So when they realize that the systems are designed to get them hooked, to get them to not look away, it empowers them to say, no, This is, you won't have my time, my attention, and that their attention is a really valuable commodity. And to be able to talk about it and lay out what all the risks are for them down the line has been important. But also Patrick's openness about his own experience comes up every day. They live in a house where they see and talk about where we're going, what our work is on a daily basis, what the challenges we're seeing are, and see it kind of lived out, and know that even if and there's a likelihood that they will have challenges, that there's also help.
Yes.
And hope and outcomes that can be positive, and look at what your dad's done and how he's living today.
I love that hint of ninja parenting in there. That's what I call it. Like, if teens want to, if they want to rebel against something anyway, just let them know. Do you understand that if when you're doing this, and this, you're doing what it is that these algorithms want you to do?
That's right.
So that'll make them like just rebel just on general principle.
I was really unpopular when I, with my teenager, we took away her phone for a year. We just saw it was problematic. The other kids don't have phones yet, and the oldest, she's 17 now, but last year she was given a phone. I gave her back a phone, but it was one that just had
We did that for 2 weeks.
Talk and text.
We did that for 2 weeks. We gave her like this phone where she owned a flip phone. She was living. And in fact, some days she would intentionally like leave it. I was like, well, and then
same.
I was like,
yes.
well, okay, well, we
They
just
were
won't be able to get in
not
touch
worth
with
it.
you. She was
Yeah.
like, how am I gonna? Because there were some teachers that would collect the phones.
Yes.
Like when you go in.
Yeah, you
how
don't
will
want
I
anyone
give
to
them
see
this
it.
flip phone? I was like, well, so she would just do without it. So so it's good to know that. But
That's
now
right.
maybe I'll next time go a little bit longer than the 2
It
weeks.
was really a change, and you get a lot of pushback. But I got to a point where I said, if I am getting angry about this and I don't want you to do it, then why am I enabling you, the tools to do the very thing that I know isn't good for you and that I don't want you to do? And unless you can rein it in, which we're asking them to rein in something that is addictive. It's addictive for us. So if I can't trust you to be able to dial it back, then I need to do that for you. You are still, young, and I have to be the adult, and I have to say, I know it's not good for you. I know it is. I'm seeing it and the outcomes, and so we did it, and it wasn't fun, and we saw a big shift. And when our oldest started to show kind of more responsible behavior and more engagement, and life was changing, and now the phone is back, but the behaviors are different, and it worked. So
well, you and I can start our own support group the next time that we have to do
For
that, because
sure.
they get really. But you and I are
But
the same.
just the last night, the night before last, I was talking our 12-year-old in, and we had played the memory game, and he was really good at it. So I said, Owen, you're so, blessed. You can really, you're good at math, you're good at sports. He's terrific at basketball. I said, the skills you're really going to need that really are the ability to manage your emotions. Because I said, you're about to go into puberty. You're going to have lots of ups and downs, and managing those is really what I spend my life trying to, perfect and work on. And he really paid attention, because I put it in the context of he's great at sports.
Yes.
He's great academically. He wants to be great, right? And then here's how you really become great, And then, when I was leaving the room, I said, I make sure you say your prayers, because you never know when you're going to need God, and it's better to keep that channel of communication open. And you could just kind of see his eyes open up, and you don't know, we don't know. We have to work on it all the time so that it's not pinch hit kind of prayer. We're open our hearts to kind of needing help all the time, and that way it's not going to be so overwhelming when we're in that position.
Well, we actually recently spoke to an amazing psychologist. He was the gentleman at Columbia University, of course, the head of the positive psychology department. He said that the number one tip for families to ensure that their kids have positive mental health is to have a practice of spirituality.
Wow.
The number one tip. Spirituality equals mental health. If you had one suggestion, one best suggestion for our listeners, and I know it's hard, but one best suggestion for our listeners to say, here's the one thing that they need to do on a consistent basis to maintain and to flourish with their mental health, what would that be?
Well, I think it's going back to that idea of service. It's such a paradox that by being there for others, you are relieved, but the response that others gives you is sustaining and affirming. So if you want to have high self-esteem, do esteemable things. Like when we talked about cognitive behavioral therapy, just practice today opening the door for someone, asking how they are, looking them in the eye, giving them a smile. All of a sudden your day will change because they'll be, oh, thank you. Their eyes will lighten up. They will have appreciation for you. You'll feel better about yourself. It's kind of a chemistry that we have the ability to do in our own lives. By being around for others, you'd be amazed. You're inviting them to be there for you too. And again, loneliness and isolation pathologizes mental health and addiction. So, and just a general health. So this is the universal thing, is social connection.
And I would say, to Patrick's earlier point, vote on this issue. And also make yourself known. It's actually, kind of counterintuitive, but the more vulnerable you are, the more you attract people to you. So when you can share your story, it's amazing how many people will gather around and feel free to share what they're experiencing.
I love, too, what you said about the being of service, because as your father said, anybody can be great because anyone can serve.
That's right.
And there is something about doing something for others that really in turn fulfills you and fills you up.
Yeah, I think that's the key to our nation's recovery.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And your family's legacy of call to service is so timely, because if you want to reduce social isolation, if you want to reduce anxiety, depression, and addiction, if you have people involved in the lives of their neighbors and their friends and their community, they will get connected and feel better about themselves, and the country will heal as a result. The most powerful part of recovery is that our main mission is to help the next suffering person.
Yes.
And what a relief that is to ourselves, that we have a purpose. Imagine people thinking about how powerful it is to have a purpose.
That certainly is one of the intentions of Realize the Dream that we all are doing together, is to really help to find healing to ourselves, to each other, and for the nation. So we certainly invite any of our listeners. I know that you all will be working with us in the next 4 years to get this 100 million hours of service done. And so we invite everyone listening to be a part of this. Thank you for joining us. If you enjoyed today's conversation, subscribe, share, and follow us at My Legacy Movement on social media. New episodes drop every Tuesday with bonus content every Thursday. Until next time, may you find inspiration to live your legacy.